folks, and welcome to another Saturday morning Samoflange. I'm Matt.
I'm Benjamin.
Heyo.
I am busy. Hang on. I need to finish this one more chapter.
Oh, one more chapter?
Yeah. Where's my bookmark?
Oh, my goodness.
That's I imagine, something that you say very frequently. Like, where's my bookmark? Because you have like 18.
I have it with me.
You have like 18 bookmarks, but you only use the one.
Well, no, I flip through these.
Oh, okay.
But,
which bookmark do you have there?
This one
Are
is
they special to
C3PO.
You? That's C3PO.
Yes, I'll tell you why. Because back in 1998, 97, I got a fistful of just about every Star Wars bookmark they had at Walden Books in exchange for a Princess Diana Beanie Baby that I gave them.
What?
The rule of trade.
I mean, bar system clearly alive and well in 1998.
And in the late 90s, I worked at Cards, Coins, Collectibles with Wes from Saturday Morning Samoflange.
Yes.
We established what was commonly...
from Princes of the Universe.
Prince of the Universe. And we established what was commonly called the rule of trade. The rule of trade was that we could trade Beanie Babies to anyone, anytime, for anything.
What?
We traded Beanie Babies for food. We traded Beanie Babies for... I traded Beanie Babies for books, yes. Someone traded Beanie Babies to get a letter grade in college.
What?
Got a letter grade for giving him two bears.
The power of the Beanie Baby.
And so we...
This is America, ladies.
We didn't have to...
for our
capitalism!
For our international audience.
Yes. And we traded... Beanie Babies were basically currency in the late 90s.
Yes, they were.
And so clothes,
there were
food...
a couple of Christmases there where like families broke up forever.
Man, yeah. Clothes, food, movie tickets, whatever we wanted. Hookers, blow... No, we didn't...
Sex, drugs, and
rock and roll. It's trying to sound like before they were famous or whatever.
In the 80s, it was watch out for sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
The tragedy of something.
In the 70s, and then
no, but
90s,
it was
watch out for those Beanie Babies.
And we never paid. Well, we got free food.
Coins and collectibles. That's where they have the Beanie Babies.
Free food,
with
free
the
books.
Cocaine
but I remember what it was. Jamie, who was the manager, he said, which bookmarks do you want? And so I picked every single Star Wars bookmark off the rack. Naturally. He goes, I said, now I need to decide. He went, all right, well, let's go back in the back. And so we went back in the back. He threw them all in the bag. He went, you're good.
And you're good.
I was like, I get all of them? I was like, yes, because I can't.
Has the statute of limitations passed for Jamie at this recording date?
I don't know. Last I heard, he was part of the school board.
Last I heard, he was in prison.
No, he wasn't in prison. But it was great. The rule of trade.
If he's in a political office, you need to double check.
Shima Shabbat. Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess so. I should. I didn't say his last name, so we're good. Just Jamie.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And it might not be his real name. That could have been his stage name.
But, so that was the rule of trade that we had back in the day.
Very cool.
Oh, but the thing was, our owner knew about the rule of trade, which I did not know.
Really?
We thought we were putting one over on him. And I swear, if I ever can get him to come over here and do a podcast, I mean, he's 80 years old or whatever, but I'd love to talk to him because he was so smart. And more than, I kept thinking, he's not that smart, but he was. He was very smart.
He was smarter than he let on.
Every time, yes. And so when I remember I was complaining because one of my teachers gave me a D, and he goes, and I deserved a C, and he goes, well, does he like Beanie Babies? And I said, Wayne, what does that have to do with anything? He went, well, offer him a Beanie Baby for a letter grade. He said, Fred did it last week, and he got it depressed.
Oh, my God.
And I looked at him and said, what?
Fred.
Wayne, Fred was someone who worked with us. And I was like, did he tell?
Yeah.
And I was going, I didn't know what to say. I was like, he said, so take a Beanie Baby up to him and see if that'll change. I was like, Wayne, I can't do that. That's stealing from the company. And he looked at me, pulled his spectacles down into his nose and goes, son, he said, I know y'all are doing it. Just go ahead and just grab the Beanie Baby and go give it. I mean, the dude was like, he was that TV's 80s sitcom's father that you wish you had, that was understanding and cool when you were in the worst trouble of your life. You're grounded forever.
Yeah.
But let's have a bedside chat here, son.
Oh, my word.
And have a few times that we learned something together.
Good
and
stuff.
We're still cool. But you're still grounded. Hit the laugh track, even though it's okay.
So, in that regard, like, is that a trope that you dislike, or is it on your pet peeves list, I wonder?
Well, let's talk about pet peeves.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I need to tell everyone, this was your idea, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
You shot off a ton of ideas.
I was feeling it.
And we did a Pet Peeves a few years back.
My favorite episode I think we've ever done.
You really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
And you said we should split this up to several, because we were talking afterwards is what was happening. And we started talking about concerning this, our pet peeves. Concerning this, our pet peeves.
Right.
And that's when you went, we should keep doing this. I
We
said,
should categorize
yeah, we'll
these.
come back to it. 3 years later.
3 years ago, right,
But now here we are.
Well, that means we've got a lot of creative ideas we've spun around.
But no, I love this idea, and this one about books, because I love to read. You're a reader, so this is really great. Now, I will tell you this. Mikey was supposed to visit us on Saturday morning sandwich. He had not no books, but he said I could do movies. I said, well, come. And he could not come tonight. He could not join us. But wishes us the best. And Mikey is doing fine. He's going to be back on.
Great.
Sooner rather than later.
We all miss Mikey.
We do miss Mikey.
We miss you, my friend.
All right. How much crossover?
You know, for this
I'm
one,
very interested to see what you think.
Our crossover will be a gigantic 0.
Okay, so
I will say that I feel like you read probably 3 times as much as any other human I know, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like you,
I
read
do
so much, and you are always in
reading's my number one thing.
It really is. It's just so great, and I love it that you are always in a book. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah,
and I know that I am outmatched by that, and my work, so my 8-hour workday involves so much reading that I am essentially strictly an Audible person. I listen to a ton of books.
Yes.
I listen to a ton of books. When I'm in a play and I'm learning lines, or I'm in a movie, I'm learning lines, I'm listening to myself. Like I record my lines and I listen back to them. So that's when I'm not reading. As if I'm in a play, I'm learning lines, that I'm doing that. But outside of shows and theater, I'm constant. Anytime I go to the gym, anytime I go walking, I'm always listening to a book. And so Audible has my business fully.
Yeah.
And I have ripped through tons of books. I was just telling you last week how many Star Wars EU books I've gotten through just in the past year, because I've just been ripping through all the ones narrated by Mark Thompson.
And audio books are a big deal. A lot of people are doing audio now. It's really big, Audible
and I'm
stuff.
an
So that's great.
voice actor as well. So
yes.
I want to be a part of it.
And that's what you're doing, trying to hone your craft.
But I used to read so much more. And honestly, I wanted to tell you this story. Way back in 1998, speaking of which, during the Beanie Baby boom.
Yeah.
That's hard to say 5 times fast. I made a New Year's resolution sometime around that point when you and I had, I guess, just met fairly recently. And I had grown up reading fantasy books and sci-fi books, and that was pretty much my only genre that I read. I loved, like, Dragonlance was my first love. As far as
I do recall.
Yeah, I saw the
your Dragonlance board game.
Up there, and I was impressed. I wanted to ask you about that, and here in the board game Stockade. And but that was it. But then my New Year's resolution was I'm going to read only it has to not be sci-fi or fantasy, and that's it. And then I remembered calling you or talking to you, because I was going to say texting you, because this was 98, or it would have been like early 2000s or something. And because I had to read like the latest Star Wars book or something. Like I had to finish the Grand Admiral Thrawn trilogy.
Of course,
yes. Know, whatever it was.
Yes.
And then so that was like my one exception. I broke it like in July. And then the rest of the year I read biographies, I read history books, I read a romance novel, I read an Indiana Jones adventure novel, like anything that wasn't sci-fi or fantasy, and it was so good. Anyway, so but now I do so much reading for work that I can't stand to physically move my eyes at the end of the day, and so I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah, I love reading. That's one. So I was glad you did pet peeves of books, because that's interesting.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna have to go with one since you went 0, because we always do this. But I'm gonna defend my one.
I got totally off topic.
I think there could be.
You really, because
there. I'm not saying there will be, but I'm just thinking it's within the realm of possibility.
All right.
So who would like to go first?
I will go first. So
go for it. Go ahead.
You
5.
can give me the finale, because I will say I struggled to make this list, and I'm curious. Did you have it immediately?
I have 5 and an honorable mention.
Like before the first 5 minutes were gone. Probably.
Yeah. Books. I can do this.
I know.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So this is an episode where I'm very excited to hear what you have.
The hardest thing was to rank them.
No kidding.
That was hard because number 1 switched up and I ranked them.
And I think that I could see that too. So let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Okay.
And I can give an example, too.
Mine are pretty simple, so I'll go first because
Go ahead.
I want to hear yours more than anything. And then, so this was just a kind of a throw-on there. It was just like a good movie. Mm-hmm. I don't like it when books stay in the same place for too long. With scenes, when a movie switches
I see
from,
that.
Like, here's this scene, now this is going on over here, and that's going on over there. Like, tell me a story, but show me cinematically. When books just stay in the same freaking place, and it feels like you started here and you're at the end of the book and you're there again, and it's like, for crying out loud, don't they ever go anywhere else? That it feels so flat, and I think that I complained to you perhaps on the podcast this year or last year about the Obi-Wan Kenobi book that you liked and that I didn't, where it was basically him on Tatooine.
Oh, I love that.
And he was having camel horse races and stuff or EOP races and stuff going on. I just felt like they were in that desert, and it never did anything different, and it was just so like, oh God. Like the most exciting thing was an EOP race that happened. Like a wild EOP gets away and he has to grab the reins, and I just couldn't have cared any less. It was just all the same. It felt all the same, and it was just like, it just felt flat, and then at the end of it, I didn't feel like I knew anything new and interesting about Tatooine or Jawas or Obi-Wan or anything. It just felt very like, okay, well, I'm going to forget all this by next week, and it just
That's fair.
Didn't matter.
That's fair. Need to change the scenery more often.
And there are any book that, or if they just linger on a scene for way too long, and it's like nothing's happening, and it just stays there in that scene. So what do you think about that? No,
that's fair. That's totally fair.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so one of mine is not technically the author's fault, but it is. It's definitely the editor's fault.
Oh.
I despise misspelled words.
What? You see this often enough that it made your top 5 list.
Yes, because there's no reason why that should have gone.
No.
If I could find or something like that, or a misprinted word, or I've always had. I can't remember which Star Wars book it was. I've always had sad luck. Or no, what was it?
I've always had sad luck.
It's not bad luck.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think it was sad luck.
Yeah.
Or something like it was. I can't now. I can't remember what it was. But I was like, that's not. They meant this word, not the other word.
Yeah.
Or bad luck, or something like that. But then the double words, or some. I don't know. Something was misspelled, and they meant this one, but they said this instead.
Yes.
You're about to start a ward. A ward, a war.
A ward.
Not a word, or whatever. And it was something like that. And I'm thinking, wow, that's sloppy. Because a proofreader and an editor and a big publication company, they should have caught this.
Exactly.
And I caught it the reader on the first try.
And you probably read really fast.
And I read faster. But the thing is, though, step up your game. Step up your game.
Seriously.
Editor probably more is responsible for that. That's their whole point, is to comb it over, make sure there aren't any misspellings or double words or phrases.
Very true.
One time a sentence was repeated, and no one caught it.
Wow.
I guess it was late that night when he was reading that page.
A Star Wars book very recently that had like a whole chunk of dialogue repeated again, and that could have been on the narrator. It could have been on the director of whoever produced it, at the recording studio. But even still,
but I just hate that.
So that's a huge pet peeve, though. When you
it's fine. It's number 5.
Why does it bother you so much?
Well, I mean, it's just because they should have. The amateur called it, and the professionals should have called it.
Takes you out of the story.
Oh yeah,
it ruins.
Well, it lets you know that. Well, it lets you know that it's a story too. I mean, it definitely is a bump in the road when because at first you got to reread the sentence again, going.
Yeah,
that's not the word. What are they trying to say here? Oh, it means this. Oh, come on.
That's what I think would bother me.
I even tut probably when it come across it. I'm like, pick up your game, man. I'm just so irritated that
look at me. Oh, not you, bro.
They paid an editor and they didn't do their job. Is the thing.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about that because I think honestly one of my top 5 pet peeves 2-3 years ago was when I was talking about public speaking, and like they paid this person to give this speech, and that's what they gave.
It's the guy not staying behind the blind on stage. You can see him. He's right there. And it's like the director didn't. Come on, man.
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Sure. My number 4 pet peeve is world building done overdone.
That's a very good one. I know what you're talking about.
Overdone world building. If I am not because I just told you the story about how I read sci-fi and fantasy, especially fantasy books.
I wonder who you're talking about here.
They
I can take a guess.
Renowned for, this is going to be the first book of this 12-part epic whatever series, right?
Terry Brooks.
And if I'm going into a Terry Brooks series,
I got it.
If you're starting a series, you're like, here's the Wheel of Time, book 1. Like, if you start reading something like that, okay, fine. I'm up for a little world building because I know I'm getting into a 12-book series. I want the Lord of the Rings style background information.
That's history.
Exactly.
That's
history.
That in a way is world building. I get it, but that's more of the history, the lore.
Correct.
And I love Tolkien. So
yes.
But Brooks, obviously inspired by Tolkien.
Clearly.
To me, and he does some good stuff, but he doesn't understand that world building shouldn't feel like a very boring speech about biology.
There it is.
Or whatnot.
That's what I'm talking about.
It feels like a boring lecture on flora and fauna,
flora and fauna.
Flora and fauna, and it's boring.
Yeah.
It's boring. It's just boring.
Why am I reading this?
It's deposition that we don't need.
But look, I forgive it if I'm reading a 12-part book series or a 15-part honor.
But if it's 12 and 15, you slowly inject that. You open up that world over 12 books.
Right, that's exactly right. And so
don't try to hammer. This is the state of the world because you wasted so much time without telling the story.
If I'm reading a one-off book or a one-er or something like that, or if I'm reading a Star Wars book that I know is a one-and-done author, or the Star Wars lore has already been made up somewhere else, something when they get into any kind of world-building crap, especially on a planet with like sentient flying beings that like are boring anyway, or just stupid alien species, and they try to get into this whole background as to why the aliens act like this. Like, I don't care. Just show me what Luke is going to do.
Yeah.
Just use the Force and do the thing. Like, I don't care about the aliens and their background history. Yeah. And so if it's a one-off book, I don't want it at all. Like, it's a pet peeve.
You don't want to just basically take over the story.
Don't waste my effing time. If I have no patience for it in a one-off, but I have some patience for it, and I actually want it if it's done well in a big epic series. If it's a fantasy series or you're building a world like the Honor Harrington series, whose author I lose now, but that's a big 15-part epic too. One of the greatest series I've ever read, like naval space warfare in the future. Terrific books, and lots of dropped-in history, lore moments, and it's beautiful. But good grief when they overdo it. Oh, it's just, come on. Why did I just read the last 4 pages? That's why I don't read. I can't finish Lord of the Rings book. I can't get through it because I read 4 pages about what the water in a well smelled like. And like, dude, I get it. The well water smelled bad. Like,
I love Tolkien.
I know you do.
That's
what I knew you. We've talked about this.
It's Bob Ross painting a masterpiece, and you're not bored about it.
Bob Ross is done in 30 minutes.
There's happy trees. Happy trees.
To the end of the episode, and you look. You're like, oh my God, how did he do that right in front of me? And I don't know how he did it.
I love it because he altered and just he flipped the table on what fantasy was. He let everyone know what he created fantasy.
Yeah.
And just really wrote the template that every Robert Jordan freely admitted that he wants to be a Tolkien. I mean, and he knows he can't. So does Terry Brooks. So does what was it? The horror writer. Oh my gosh, Stephen King.
Yeah.
Wrote in his book Ennui that everyone wants to be Tolkien. But what he's even me at one time. We want to be Tolkien, but we will never be Tolkien. We have to be ourselves. We can't live up to. It's like being Superman.
Yeah,
he's very well respected, but he's not for everyone.
I've never read the.
He's not for everyone.
What's the Game of Thrones series? I've read the first book, I think, and I liked it. It was fine, but I've heard that it's a slog as well. And I'm never going to read them. But
I'm not going to read him because he's going to die. He's never going to finish them.
He's never going to finish it.
He finishes them, I'll read them. Number 4. Number 4 for me, I'm going to hit a popular series here, and people are going to be upset with me. I do not like overpowered items.
Oh my God, don't even get me started.
I have read...
You and I have talked about the wish machine at the end of Picard Season 1 too many times. You know how much I hate.
Okay.
Captain, we made this magical wish machine on this alien planet, and if you just think up what you need, shut the hell up.
Yeah. We give you Q-like powers, really, if you think about it.
All right.
So here's the deal.
Wish machine.
The wish machine.
I love this already.
I've read Harry Potter 3-4 times. This might
be my number one. This could. Oh, it's up there for me. Like
This is a crossover.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But if I could rewrite my list, it would be up there.
I think I read Harry Potter for the last time. I'll read it to my kids.
Have you read it more than once?
Yes. Okay. 3 times.
So
3 times.
I think I've been through it twice.
But I don't know if I can read it again. I can read it to my kids, but I don't think I can read it again.
Tell me more about the overpowered items that you didn't
because I mean, Dumbledore, if he wanted to be Voldemort, the Sorcerer's Stone, the little timepiece that goes back in time. I mean, he had the items to kill. There's no reason for him to die. There's no reason for any of this to happen because they could have gone back, changed time, rewritten the world, never died, been super powerful. But no, why? And I get it. It's a children. I need to go easy on it because it's a kid's book. But because it's so dang popular, and people love these books. And to be honest, yes, they take you away to the whole magic school thing is now just generic. It's been done a million times. J.K. Rowling maybe didn't write the very first book, but she popularized wizarding school. There's been on a witches and warlock school and vampire school and all these schools. But you know what? You're all copying J.K.
Of course they are.
J.K. came up with the original idea. Good for her. And good for her characters, which are fun and interesting. Good for the entertainment, the story-wise. But those when you read about these items, you're like, wait a minute. If Dumbledore knew, he knows where it is, he has the item, why doesn't he use it? And then Voldemort is not and I get it, she was just writing these one at a time. She really didn't have a
bird in his office that can
phoenix. A phoenix.
It can heal dragon wounds and it can fly and carry all these things.
Well, carry that with you when you know Voldemort's coming. I don't know. And that's the thing. And I was like, because now I'm getting too old and I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I know she didn't have an idea.
Of course.
She didn't know these were going to be so popular.
Of course.
She was just coming with these big magical items, but now you have to explain them away. Or you just ignore them. Because now you're thinking, that's a conundrum, because then everyone should be saying, well, why didn't they just use this if it exists?
True.
Hermione has something that sends her back in time. Why don't we just use that? Dumbledore can use that and not die. I don't know.
I mean, I almost feel bad that you've told me about this because now I don't know if I'll be able to read them without thinking that now. But
I'll only read them to my kids.
Well, look,
and that'll be it.
The strength of those books is certainly in the characters, and that's what is great. Is the storytelling of the characters and the heart that those characters have.
And the book series is fun.
Why I haven't thought about it is that's point
fair.
Is because of that. But I feel you so much on the overpowered items.
Overpowered items. I'm like, well, then why not this?
Things that feel like were just a catch-all. Like I don't know.
Well, it defeats the whole crisis,
exactly,
or the antagonist of the entire series.
Didn't figure out a clever way to get out of this, and you just wanted to write it in, and that's a writing tactic. You know, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to take your characters, and I forget what the exercise is called, but you take your characters and then you make something bad happen, then you make something bad happen, and then you double it, and then you make something bad happen. And that's a term. Like the writers break that down so that you are suddenly in the worst possible, impossible situation. There's no way your hero is going to survive this moment. And then, I like that when it's done well, because that happens in every good book. You've got your heroes down and out. They're at their worst possible moment, and no hope. And then something happens, and it's a defining moment for them. And if that moment is ruined by an OP item from somewhere that came out of their butt, like it cheapens the whole experience. Like they just clearly just wrote it into the ground for that purpose instead of just writing away, making it meaningful. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I agree.
Good.
3.
How did I?
Did we skip you?
Oh, here
you
it
went
is.
first.
No,
3.
I accidentally did it.
Okay.
Messed up my list. Now, my number 3 is a line that is any variant, really, that I hear this line. I loathe the line, how long was I out?
Because no one ever says that? I don't know.
Because no one ever says that, but it's like, how long was I out? Oh, about 5 days.
Usually it's what happened.
No, that's true.
Who hit me?
But like any sort of like,
ow.
How long was I unconscious? Because it feels so cheap to me that the next event happening with that particular character or hero wasn't going to happen or scheduled to happen for like 4 days. So let's make a catastrophic injury.
To fast forward through time, so now we can.
4 days.
Since I have nothing else to do
and
here.
then they wake up. Now, how long was I out? And it's like, oh, you've been out 4 days.
Just in time for the next action
scene.
scene.
Is about to get started.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to go. I have to get to the. No, you have to stay in bed, says the doctor. It's like, no, I'm out. I'm coming out now, and I'm a hero, and I'm going to charge. Get off, screw off, doctor. I can do this. And it's like, come on. That is just so. Maybe that's from my Star Trek training that I've seen too much of,
yeah.
Because that's a very tired TV trope of Star Trek.
It is.
And like getting knocked unconscious. Like I love the show Smallville. We talked about this a few weeks ago. And Smallville is so funny. Like it's a CW show. It's great. It knows what it is. But by season 3 or so, just the slightest bump on anyone's head, the slightest bit of pressure, bam, knocked out cold. Yeah. Superman comes in, does all the super speed, stops bullets, and
that's an unfortunate trope of the TV show.
Of course, yes. And that I forgive. That's fine. I don't care. Serialized, whatever. But in a book, you've got time. You shouldn't be resorting to he got knocked out and didn't see it happen when Superman blocked the bullets.
Yep.
I don't forgive
cop out.
I don't forgive it in books. Anytime I see how long was I out or whatever version, I just wonder like, okay, what was it that they couldn't figure out?
What was they couldn't figure out how to get out of or tell a span of time?
That takes me out of the story because it immediately makes me wonder what the author couldn't figure out. So that's my number 3.
My number 3 is boring action. You can't just say a book is boring. What's the action? They can't describe action very well.
An EOP ride across the desert.
I liked Kenobi, so I can't. I thought that was great, but dogfights or in planes or starships in Star Wars,
sure.
Or hand-to-hand action combat, shooting guns and everything. There's people who can do it really good and be very descriptive, and you can kind of see the actions.
Example of seeing the action.
Go down. Stackpole's really good writing dogfights and hand-to-hand combat.
But then,
I don't have anyone per se. I mean, there's a few of these authors who could, maybe work a little bit more at their craft there because I don't know where they're going in the dogfight. I don't know. Sometimes I get lost in what's going on in the battle.
Can't visualize who's doing
and I can't visualize some of it, and I'm like,
that's a skill. I think. Yeah. I agree with you. That's a good skill because
it is a hard skill.
A lot of the Star Wars books have those big dogfights for sure. And then that Honor Harrington series I was just telling you about, keeping in track with all that naval combat going on these big armadas and fleets.
And you better be able to describe what's going on because you're describing action now.
Exactly.
And so we need to see some of these things happening. Some of these I can definitely see, and then some of them like, okay, they're flying around. I can't see this in my head.
I have never written a book,
so that
would be really hard to do.
It's that gravel road before you get back on the paved road. You're still on your destination, but there's a little gravel there that kind of the noise. You're out for a little while until you get back on the pavement again, and that's usually when the scenes slow down and there's more dialogue. But when they get to action, unfortunately, these people can't write action.
Struggles. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Can you normally forgive the lack of action or the
If the book is overall good, the points of action, unfortunately, you kind of glaze over.
Is there opposites where you I love the action, but this guy can't write for crap? Like, have you ever had those kinds of experiences?
Just an overall bad book. I don't think good action can save a book.
That's a good point.
All right. 2.
My number 2. What did you just say before that? You said
boring action.
Boring action and
I talked about
because
what's yours? Go ahead.
I wrote long scenes where the characters don't like each other. Characters who don't like each other don't do anything and or stranded.
I haven't said that.
And then
one.
they say, "Well, I got nothing else." Here, okay. So I said, "This is what I wrote."
That's very specific.
I got nothing else to do, so I reckon we can sit here and have a heart to heart. So.
Okay. No, they're just talking for the sake of talking. There's a few books you should never read: Jedi Trial, The Approaching Storm.
Okay.
This is the Stealth and Gambit.
Off the board.
These have just boring dialogue moments that do not matter.
Yeah.
They're just talk for the sake of talking. And it's just talking because I need to pad pages.
Because you just picked up a physical list. Was this your...
No, those are what's wrong with those books right there.
Okay.
It's just talking for they got nothing to do but just to pad pages for their hardback or paperback novel.
Yeah.
They're trying to hit a quota. They don't have a story in their mind.
Yes.
So they just sit down and have a scene just drawn out that does not add to the overall story, does not matter. It's just something you were padding pages just so you could get paid and reach that minimum.
Yeah, and you can feel it. I
know what you mean.
Yeah,
it wouldn't make my top 5, but yeah, because overall that's just a bad book.
That's a recent thing that I think I've been hitting a lot more often. Like it just feels like, I think you're right. It just feels like it's just being padded.
Yeah,
and like case in point, for instance, you might know the book. I don't remember what it was because I just read it and forgot it. That's fine. But I think it was The Hand of Thrawn, when Luke and Mara are going to find Thrawn's intelligence cache. Like he's already
in the castle.
And his castle that he's got. And it's basically a giant antenna. And the Hand of Thrawn is actually the castle itself, right?
Okay.
And that's the big mystery. So spoiler alert, sorry for Hand of Thrawn. Like, there you go.
People know this. Go ahead.
So Mara and Luke spend half the effing book, it feels like, just in the side passages and hidden from the few Imperials that are there. And then she gets shot or something right away, and then he has to get her back out there, and then they go back into the freaking hidden passages, and it's like, for crying out, they've been in caves and passages for this whole freaking book.
And they're talking to those bird people, and it's just not, it's bad.
Making me nuts.
It's boring.
And then she gets shot right away, and then
it's boring.
He has to force heal her back to life, and that was another moment. She's like, how long was I out?
Yeah. Timothy Zahn, I guess, had a quote. He had a short story in mind when they paid him. He went, oh, dang, I got to make a whole novel.
Here we go. Let's pad this thing right now.
It's not as good as I remembered rereading it.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine, but it just... I liked some of the storylines in it, but that Luke and Mara, that's another. Honestly, that fits in my number 5 too, where just like it felt like they were just in the side of that temple in the hidden room for the whole book. Like the scene never changed, and I was like, could you imagine making that into a movie? Oh my god, it was just nightmarish.
There's a story I just read called Star Wars called Balance Point. Well, I love this author. But I will admit, by the third, like if you could section this off into 4 sections, the third section drags a little bit because they are on the same planet, but it doesn't seem like much is getting accomplished after a while. Yeah. You're like, okay, you were on this planet earlier. I think we're overstaying our welcome here. Let's move to the end. And then it gets to the end and it's fine. It's great at the end.
Yeah, sure.
But there's that third act in there that just kind of
there should be a reason you come back to that planet, like a big reason.
Yeah. Well, they never left was the problem. But the thing is, though, you can still have an interesting thing, but it felt like they didn't have anything, and she's like, I need to just hurry up and get from point A to point B, because it was a part of our overall series that she wasn't doing, but other authors were taking the story from there.
Oh, I see. Well, that's tough. That's tough to work with other creative minds like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what hamstrung her on this one. Even though it's a fine book, it just wasn't her best. All right, so anyone who knows me, my brother knows this. He probably thinks it's number 1, but it's not. It was number 1 for a minute, but then I moved it to number 2.
First person.
Yeah, there you go. First person.
I was waiting for you to purse your lips into the F word.
I don't like it.
I knew. I wrote right here. Matt's number 1 is first person.
It almost was, and it got replaced by something else.
Tell me more. Tell your loyal listeners why you don't like first person.
I've said this several times, so I'll just be brief on it. Then we'll get to your number 1. But obviously, I enjoy the classics. Frankenstein. Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, Holmes' perspective from I love Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
And you're I'm for a person. Yes. For some reason, I like it for the classics. But today, every effing fan fiction is a first person thing because it's the stupid. It's a Dear Diary, and everyone can write Dear Diary. Mm-hmm. Everyone can write it, and it's never that good.
Yeah.
And I'm just done doing unless it's a classic. I'm not, because I love that we're reading Dr. Jekyll's notes.
Last week,
I think that's thematic. Dr. Frankenstein's.
I talked to you about Elam Garrick from Deep Space Nine has a Dear Diary version of basically his leading up to how he got to Deep Space Nine and then what happened after DS9 ended.
I know.
And it is a Dear Diary series, but it's from Garrick's point
We
of
did
view,
talk about this.
Who's an interesting character. And I
That's
finished
true.
it just yesterday, I think, and delightful, lovely backstory and forward leading up to Garrick, and I love that character, and he added a lot more depth to it. It was great.
That's fine.
Lovely
that's fine.
Book. But
it's me.
You're not going to do it because
first person. I would be out of it immediately.
Yeah, of course, because it is a Dear Diary story. Like he's writing a letter.
No, and I get it. I get it. It's fine.
So I'll give you the spoiler alert for.
Oh, I Am Legend is really good. That's first person.
Oh, really? Okay.
But that's actually a short story, really.
Okay.
But I really love that one.
So there are a few exceptions.
Well, that was written in the 70s,
but
60s?
But otherwise, you feel that it
Yeah, it's got to be with the classics. I Am Legend must be the most recent
one. Why
one.
do you not like it?
I think it's too easy. I'm not interested in any. I've seen it done a handful of times. I've enjoyed it. Now, what are you going to do that's differently? Well, it's from their perspective. I've already seen that.
We've done that. Yeah,
we've done this before.
Right.
We've done The Man Who Visits Dracula's Castle. I've already read about his adventures.
So you didn't like Moby Dick at all, I guess. Because I hated Moby Dick.
Oh, Moby Dick's awful. I don't like Moby Dick.
Call me Ishmael.
Last of the Mohicans does it. Oh, do they do it? I'm sure they do. It's a classic. Anyway, it's okay back then, but now it's been done to death.
You want your protagonist's name in the third person in the first sentence.
It's like someone trying to make a silent movie where the text pops up in between. Like, why do we need this? Why do we need to go, well, so it's a form of movie making. Yeah, but it's a form that I don't want to see. So there you go.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point and a good opinion. So I'm all for that.
Anyway, go ahead. Well, number one, you won, by the way. You'll never get this one.
Oh, I mean, mine is basically, it feels like the same. I'm going to very briefly touch this because it's just happened too often lately. And at the end of the book, I realized it was just engaging enough to keep me reading, but it never has a payoff. And I feel like
that's terrible.
I feel like I spent hours just like, well, it's about to get good though, right? Like it's just, ooh, that's a little tease, or that could be good. And then I get to the last page, or I get to the last chapter, and I realize that there's not enough time to wrap this up or to make it give me the payoff that I need. And then I just chuck the book across the room, or I just like pull my headphones out and just like, oh, how? Yeah. Really? Like I check every time that happens, especially like on Audible. I look at the runtime of the whole book, and I think, good God, what I could have done with that 15 hours and 36 minutes of my life, or whatever it was. Right. It's just like, oh, that's my number one pet peeve, is getting to the end of it and feeling like it was just a giant waste of my time.
Totally understandable.
And I can't. There's no way to know. Like
you don't know because you don't want to ruin it. You don't want to skip to the end. But yeah,
I have read plenty of books where it's just the 3/4 of it is just like, all right, but then that last act is such a payoff, and you're like, oh man, what a great! I'm so glad I read this just for that one moment.
If it can have a good payoff at the end, moment, I agree.
Like a book can suck, but if it's got, but if Luke finally used the red lightsaber,
whatever it was, then there's your payoff. And a good book should have a payoff at the end because you've been sitting there on this journey.
When you get all the way through that final the end, and it never had a feeling of like, oh, that was great. Like, the whole thing. And that happens way too often, where it's just like, what the heck did I just read?
Right.
So,
right.
In a way, I guess that's a good thing, because it inspires me, like, to know, like, this crap got published. Like, I can do better than that. No. I can tell a good story. And if this guy is published, then I need to sit down and get going, because dang. Anyway, that's far and away my number one. That was the first thing I wrote down, definitely.
Yeah.
So.
My number one, as I thought about it, and again, I've talked about this so much on my channel, but lack of continuity. If you're going to have a series, make sure it connects to each other. That's why I like the expanded universe so much. They connected for the most part. That's why I could not get into Star Trek books, even though I wanted to. There's no continuity in between them.
Tell me more.
It's whatever author is writing it the day. Everyone has their own little. There's the Shatner universe, the Shatner books. There's the other universe that contradicts those. And I really wanted to, because I was into. Everyone knows the story, but I was reading Star Trek books before Star Wars.
Right.
And then she couldn't find the Star Trek book, so she bought me a Star Wars book instead, and then the rest is history.
History is made.
But she's still a Star Trek fan. And, the thing is that the books are nice, but as I was reading them, I realized there was a continuity error. And I pointed out, she went, yeah, well, they hadn't made that season yet, so the books hadn't done it.
So what?
Well, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And then Forgotten Realms, I had to stop reading. I was a big Forgotten Realms fan back in the day. R.A. Salvatore, Ed Green.
I didn't know
who were the other people?
R.A. Salvatore is the big one.
He's the big one, but Ed Green wrote it was Ed Green, and then there's a girl that I used to buy too.
I couldn't remember.
Anyway, I was reading them all. I was reading about this world.
Stuff.
But then people, even R.A. Salvatore's,
really,
there's continuity errors galore in it. And he says, well, hey, when I wrote this character, I thought I'll never use them again, so I killed them off. But fans were outraged, so I said, well, they're back. Oh. Or you said, and they never cross paths again. But then everyone said, "Oh, well," so I brought them back.
What about that time when
you brought them back? After a few books later, which was, to be honest, 10 years later. But still, the thing is, though, continuity man.
Yeah.
Continuity man. Get some continuity in there.
And
so I just stopped
that's
reading
important.
it. And I was enjoying the storyline.
It matters more in a big
Dragonlance has what?
Like
50, 60.
Well,
it better have continuity if I'm going to read it.
It does. It really does.
It better have continuity. I would gladly read these, but it better have some daggum continuity. Because if it's just all over the place, what's the point?
No,
well, this author, don't read that author.
No.
His 5 books are not part of the canon.
No.
And this author wrote 2 books that were retconned later on. Then I'm out. I'm out.
No. I feel like Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman.
I'm sure they kept in continuity.
They still do, and they're still writing. Like they're writing a new trilogy right now, actually.
Good for them.
And I've met Tracy Hickman before, and my sister has she's gotten an autograph from Margaret Wise for me at a con before, and so I got to. I mean, you would have loved it. I got to listen to Tracy Hickman wax poetic about his Lord of the Rings. He did a whole Lord of the Rings presentation at the con that I went to, and it was great. I think it was in Salt Lake City FanX or something like that, which is a great con, by the way, and everybody should go, and I might go again this year, and so we'll see.
All right.
But, no, they do a great job of this character dies, that's it, and you can get some, like, there's a few good stories of, like, what? That doesn't make sense, but because he was in Solemnia when this was going on. But then you realize you thought it was a continuity error, but then you realize that it wasn't them, or that they really were there, and this is how that you thought that they were not there because of this, but then you realize who was lying or who was doing it and why, and it matters. It still has depth and it matters, and so they find good creative ways to fill in gaps that you didn't know existed. But then you think about it and you realize, like, oh crap, because when you learned about it years ago, one character you didn't realize was an evil, conniving, power hungry person, and that they were laying this trap from the beginning. And then you realize, like, oh, so that makes total sense because it fits into the world of an evil character that they had arced for several books, and it fits perfectly. And then that way, even if it's something that we thought we knew where that other character was, then they logically write it into there, so it makes sense. So when your character dies, or if somebody comes back or whatever, but then you retcon what you were just saying, you jigsaw puzzle stuff, then what happens in the books when you're reading them doesn't have as much weight or gravitas because you know that it can be changed at any freaking moment.
True.
So, like, who cares about what happens? It loses all of its credibility.
That's true.
Yeah.
True.
So, like, man.
Well, so no crossover. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You won.
Thank
you
you.
won. There's a lot of things that can be pet peeves. But folks, let us know in the chat, what are your pet peeves for books? Do you share any of ours, or are there some other ones that we've forgotten?
Bad paper. Bad copy back. Paperback or hardback?
Hardback all the way.
Every time?
Every Saturday.
Morning.
Samoflange.